So here's a quick video on what is music sequencing. Music sequencing is something that's permeated the whole way people make music, apart from playing live instruments, to the point that you may not be able to describe it. In fact, it's so prevalent now, I can do music sequencing on my phone, you know, it's just a given. So if you're going to try and describe it, it might be that, yeah, I know what it is, but what is it? So let's just quickly rewind. 1980s, we have the introduction of Musical Instrument Digital Interface, MIDI, whereby a musical instrument can be interfaced with, can communicate with a computer. That's essentially what it is. Okay, so what I'm going to use is Logic to have a look at the basics of what is MIDI sequencing, what are the functions and the possibilities. But you've got to check out all the other software, which have become so competitive over the years, they now almost look the same as each other. So Logic, Cubase, where it used to be the big two, kind of still are. Pro Tools has MIDI sequencing, even though it's very much for live. We have Ableton Live, which is also at the college here. There's a lot more. I don't want to tell them because I want you to investigate them. So basically, let's have a look at Logic. If I open up Logic, I tend to open mine so there's a blank screen and it asks me what I want to do. So what I've got here is not much. I'm going to press play because we have a transport bar. So it does model on an old concept of a tape machine, of a reel-to-reel tape machine, which you have to wind and rewind, even though it isn't that because we can jump anywhere we want. So we've got the whole thing being arranged. The arrangement, where there's nothing at the moment, see the timeline is moving. That's how we're looking at our music, as a left to right progression. We can really manipulate the screen so we can zoom in on stuff, etc, etc. Let me just stop that for a minute, and I'm going to open up a virtual instrument. So I'm going to do it with some drums. So I'm just going to quickly choose something here, okay. Okay, some horrible sounding drums. So that data there can be played in immediately off this keyboard, or some drum pads, or I could actually use something that I blew. I could put pads on my body and jump around the room and it would take that data into there. So it doesn't really matter the method, it's just that the keyboard is the most popular method. Okay, so we can input the data live. Once it goes in live, in fact before we start, we do have a click track, so we can, you should be able to hear that, we can set the tempo and play stuff in. Maybe you're not a live musician, you can't do that, or you find that hard. That's okay, because we're just inputting data. So I'm going to open up the piano roll, which is a feature of most sequences. In fact, it's a necessary part of it. Don't know how much detail you can see here, but what we've got is a breakdown of the bars, kind of like we did on the arrange page, where we've got a ruler at the top, which gives us how many bars we've got. But here we've got grids in between each bar. We've got all these subdivisions. So I'm going to get a pencil out, a virtual pencil, and draw in at even spaces, hopefully, or wherever, some randomness, some notes, which translate to the sounds. If I run my keyboard up and down this little keyboard, which you may not be able to see, probably just looks like a white strip to you, but look, that's the same as me running my finger on the keyboard. Once I put these notes in, I can change the length of them, I can change the velocity, which, depending on the sound, will actually change the intensity of the sound. And while I'm drawing the stuff in, we have something going on in the background, the snap, which is usually something people don't change much. It's snapping to the nearest little subdivision on the grid, which means it's kind of like a magnet. Everything I put in will be in time to the sequencer engine, to the tempo, the speed of the track. If I put it in live, then they won't be bang on necessarily to those grid points. But then we have a thing called quantize. You can leave it so it sounds natural, or you can quantize it, which basically is another breakdown of subdivisions 1 note in a bar, 2 notes in a bar, 4, 8, 16, 32, and then we also have triplets, we have swing quantizers, so it allows a bit of movement, so it sounds a bit more natural. And what that is quantize is kind of like a magnet again. Let's say you put the notes in, then you turn on the quantize, imagine it's this magnet, and everything just shifts in line to the nearest point that you've determined. So the data, when it goes in, it doesn't matter what state it's in because you tidy it up afterwards. So that's one of the pros and that's part of the pros and cons of sequencing, is that everybody can do it, but then that means that you can lose some quality if you're not thinking about the music. Okay, so let's just get rid of the piano roll. Oh, let's have a look at the score, because though this is not scoring software, there is dedicated scoring software. What I just put in there are musical notes on a stave, and I can shift stuff around in that way. So let's just change that sound. Those same notes that I've put in, I'm now going to make it be a piano, because we're going to look at another kind of virtual instrument, and that is one of the virtual instruments that not just has sounds, digital sounds, it actually has real sounds, the sound of a piano. And that's actually recorded samples of a real piano, because what we have here is a sampler, virtual sampler. You record actual sounds from real life, put them in here, and they can now be assigned to whichever kind of MIDI input device you want to use. Okay, so virtual synthesizers also, just quickly have a look at one, ES2, and it's got banks of sounds which are all editable. Yeah, those changes I just made are also can be automated. I was going to say automatable. They can be automated. So while I'm playing something, if I want the sound to change, I don't have to physically do it. The sequencer, I can draw in the information, and as it's playing back, things will change. So this whole process is very fluid. It's elastic. It's not stagnant at all, like live recording where you're making the musician do the job. Here it's a mixture of both. We can change stuff afterwards. The other kind of track I wanted to show you is the audio track. That's a software instrument track we've just been looking at. An audio track where I actually have to connect a microphone or an instrument, and we're going to record audio into here alongside our artificial sounds. There's also libraries, unlimited libraries of sounds. I'm just going to dig out quickly something from here so we can have a look. Don't know what this is, it's just random. Okay, so I'm just going to mute that horrible synth. Okay, so that beat there, it's a drum beat that's already sort of pre-recorded for us, even though it's electronic. I can zoom in on it, and the audio is also editable. So though we don't have a piano roll to put the notes in, we can zoom in on that. I can time stretch it, I can change the pitch of it. Let's have a look. If I just go to the flex pitch here and zoom in on it, it actually knows which note on the keyboard those beats are, which seems a bit strange. So if this was a vocal, maybe I should do it with a vocal. I'll do it with a vocal actually so you can see what I mean. But while I'm on this page, basically this audio is manipulatable. I can manipulate it because we can divide it into sections. In fact, it analyses the sections for me, and I can squash the audio around, hopefully you can see this, so that certain bits play for longer, certain other bits don't play as long. So it's just liquid. Sounds horrible what I did, but you can see it's totally fluid. So input of data and editing of that data, and it's really quite sophisticated. I'll just quickly just get a bit of vocals so you can hear. Hopefully I can do this very quickly. Vocals, gospel improv, that was called. And drop it in. Come in, please. Okay, so this vocalist here, I can go to the pitching. Let's just close this window, zoom in on it, and it's actually told me the notes on the keyboard that the vocal is at. So I can make it sing her, sing, anyhow. Sounds horrible, doesn't it? But when you want to tune into something, it's just all these little tiny shifts. Sounds a bit artificial, but you've got a lot of editability. It's almost unlimited. Now let's have a look at the mixing desk. What we have on a MIDI sequencer, apart from inputting two types of data, virtual and actual real audio, you have a mixing desk. And this is where, if you know mixing desks, or how to use a mixing desk, the technology will be easier for you to use, because you've got the separate faders for each channel. On each channel you can put audio effects like reverbs, etc. Let me just, on the horrible vocal, let's just put a echo of some sort. It's the same as if you're operating a mixing desk. There are a few differences, and this is a bit quicker. Obviously the sound quality is different, although most stuff you hear these days is going through one of these anyway. So you've got that mixability aspect. Now that can be part of the creative process. That's also why MIDI sequencing is a tool. It's not necessarily just a process. It can be a creative thing that you make your sounds deliberately warped out, rather than just for tidying stuff up. I think probably what I'm talking about is how you use it is kind of up to you, so maybe I should leave that bit. And we'll just go back to looking at the sequencer. Just now, this is an overview. Okay, I can change the tempo, I can change the time signature, I can change the time signature between bar 5 and bar 6. Suddenly it's so slow, music slows down and then goes into 7/4 instead of 4/4, which is what it defaults at. Pretty much unlimited editability of data. I'm now repeating myself, so I feel like I've kind of covered everything. Let me know if I haven't.